You're listening to Scary Sleep Stories presents The Dark Hours.
Welcome, guys. I know a lot of you use these stories to fall asleep. So before you drift off like the video, subscribe if you're new, and comment what time it is right now. Let's see who's still awake and who's not alone tonight. Let's begin.
The first time I heard the voice on the CB radio, I thought it was just another stranded motorist. By the time I realized the truth, I was already deep in a nightmare I couldn't escape. They say the long-haul trucking life can drive you crazy, but I never expected it to nearly drive me to my death. My name's Jake, and I've been a trucker for the better part of 2 decades. I've crossed this country more times than I can count, hauling everything from fresh produce to auto parts. I've seen my share of weird stuff out on the road. Ghost trucks, unexplained lights in the sky, even what I swear was a honest-to-God UFO once. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what happened that night in the backcountry of Montana. It was a run like any other. I was hauling a load of electronics from Seattle to Chicago, taking the northern route through Idaho and Montana. It was late October, and winter was coming on fast in the mountains. The forecast had warned of an early snowstorm, but I figured I could beat it if I pushed through the night. I'd just crossed the Idaho-Montana border when the snow started. At first, it was just a few flakes, nothing to worry about. But within an hour, it had turned into a full-blown blizzard. The world outside my windshield was a swirling mass of white, my headlights barely penetrating the gloom. I was considering pulling over to wait it out when I heard it. A crackle of static on my CB radio, then a voice cutting through the white noise. "Hello? Can anyone hear me? I need help." The voice was female, young-sounding, and terrified. I'd heard my share of distress calls over the years, but something about this one sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the storm outside. I keyed the mic. "This is Big Jake. What's your situation?" "Oh, thank God," the voice replied, relief palpable in her tone. "My car broke down. I'm stranded out here in the storm. I don't know where I am exactly, but I passed a sign for Route 87 a while back." Route 87. That was the road I was on, though I couldn't remember seeing any turnoffs recently where a car might have gotten stuck. "All right, stay calm," I said. "I'm on 87 now. Can you see the highway from where you are?" I think so," she said, her voice wavering. "There's a lot of trees, but I can see lights sometimes through the snow. Please, you have to help me. I'm so cold." Every instinct honed by years on the road was screaming at me that something wasn't right. But I couldn't just ignore someone in trouble. That's not who I am. "Okay, I'm going to try to find you," I said. "Keep talking to me. What's your name?" "Sarah," she replied. "My name's Sarah. Please hurry." I slowed my rig, peering out into the storm for any sign of a stranded vehicle. The wind howled around me, rocking the truck. Visibility was down to almost nothing. "Sarah, I need you to help me find you," I said. "Do you see my headlights? Can you hear my engine?" There was a pause, longer than I liked. Then, I think I see something. "Yes, I see lights. You're getting closer." But I couldn't see anything ahead except swirling snow and the vague shapes of trees. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I don't see any sign of a car." "Please." Sarah's voice took on an urgent, almost frantic tone. "You're so close. Just a little further. Turn right up ahead." I frowned. There was no right turn up ahead, at least not on any map I knew, just miles of unbroken forest. "Sarah, there's no turn here. Are you sure about where you are?" Another pause. This one stretched on so long I thought we'd lost the connection. Then Sarah's voice came back, but it was different. Lower, almost growling. "Turn right, Jake. Turn right now." A chill that had nothing to do with the storm ran down my spine. I eased off the accelerator, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Who is this?" I demanded. "What's going on here?" The laugh that came through the radio speaker wasn't human. It was a low, guttural sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh, Jake," the voice said, all pretense of being Sarah gone. "You should have turned right. Now we'll have to do this the hard way." Suddenly, my headlights illuminated something in the road ahead. A figure, standing motionless in the swirling snow. It was vaguely human-shaped, but too tall, too thin, and its eyes... God, its eyes glowed with an eerie, greenish light. I yanked the wheel hard, sending my rig into a skid. The world spun around me as I fought for control. I caught a glimpse of the figure as I careened past, its arms stretching out impossibly long, clawed fingers reaching for my truck. Then I was past it, fishtailing wildly on the icy road. It took everything I had to keep from jackknifing. By some miracle, I managed to straighten out, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. I stomped on the accelerator, pushing my rig to speeds it was never meant to go in these conditions. In my side mirror, I could see something moving through the woods parallel to the road. Something fast. Impossibly fast. The CB crackled to life again. "You can't run, Jake," the voice taunted. "We know these woods. We know all the roads. All the shortcuts." I switched off the radio, but it made no difference. The voice continued, seeming to come from the very air around me. "We've been so hungry, Jake. So very hungry. And you're going to feed us, one way or another." I drove like a man possessed, taking turns too fast, skating on the edge of control. More than once, I felt the trailer start to swing out, nearly sending me off the road. But somehow, I kept it together. Hours passed in a blur of white snow and black terror. I didn't dare stop, didn't dare even slow down. Every time I thought I'd lost them, I'd catch a glimpse of glowing eyes in the woods, or hear that terrible voice on the radio. As dawn broke, I finally burst out of the mountains and onto the plains. The storm was behind me, the road ahead clear. I pulled into the first truck stop I saw, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn off the engine. It took me 3 cups of coffee before I could even think straight. The locals gave me strange looks. I must have been a sight, wild-eyed and babbling about voices on the radio and things in the woods. Most of them wrote me off as another trucker who'd pushed himself too hard and started seeing things. But one old-timer, a leathery-faced man who introduced himself as Bill, listened to my story with a grim expression. "You're not the first to run into them," he said quietly. "Those woods, there's something wrong in them. Something old and hungry." He wouldn't say more, just shook his head and walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers. I called my dispatcher and told them I was taking some personal time. Spent a week in a motel, jumping at every shadow, before I felt steady enough to drive again. When I did get back on the road, I took the southern route. Haven't been anywhere near those Montana woods since. Sometimes, late at night when I'm driving and the CB is quiet, I think I hear a voice, a young woman, calling for help. I never answer anymore. Never will again. Because out there on the long, dark roads, not every call for help is what it seems. Sometimes, the voice on the other end of the radio isn't human at all. And sometimes, the real monsters aren't the ones we can see. So if you're ever driving through the mountains of Montana on a snowy night, and you hear a desperate voice on your radio, keep driving. Don't stop. Don't answer. And whatever you do, don't turn right. Because there are things out there in the darkness, things that are always hungry, and they know how to lure their prey. The first photo was just a blur, a dark smudge against the trees. I dismissed it as a malfunction, a quirk of the cheap trail camera. But as the images progressed, night after night, the figure became clearer, closer. And on the final night, when I woke to find my camera smashed and claw marks on my tent, I realized I wasn't documenting wildlife. I was being hunted. My name is Lena, and I'm, or I guess I should say I was, a wildlife photographer specializing in endangered species. I'd spent years traipsing through jungles and scaling mountains, capturing images of animals on the brink of extinction. But it was a rumor of an unclassified species in the Pacific Northwest that led me into the heart of Olympic National Park and into a nightmare I'm still trying to understand. It started innocently enough. I'd heard whispers in cryptozoology forums about sightings of an unknown primate in the dense forests of Washington state. Most serious scientists dismissed it as yet another Bigfoot hoax, but something about the descriptions caught my attention. They didn't match the usual Sasquatch lore. This creature was reportedly smaller, more agile, with peculiar bioluminescent markings. Intrigued, I packed my gear and headed into the wilderness. I found a secluded spot deep in the forest, miles from the nearest hiking trail. Perfect isolation to set up my equipment without human interference. The first few days were uneventful. I set up my tent, scouted the area, and positioned my trail cameras at strategic points. During the day, I'd hike, taking photos of the lush forest and its known inhabitants: elk, black bears, the occasional cougar. At night, I'd review the footage from my trail cams, hoping for a glimpse of my elusive quarry. It was on the fourth night that I saw it, just a dark blur at the edge of the frame, there and gone in an instant. I nearly missed it, almost dismissed it as a glitch or maybe a bat flying past the lens. But something made me pause, made me go back and look closer. There was a shape to the blur, a suggestion of a form that was neither human nor any animal I recognized. I felt a tingle of excitement. Could this be what I'd come for? The next night, it appeared again. This time, the image was clearer. A hunched figure, moving on all fours but in a way that seemed off, unnatural. And there, just barely visible, were faint glowing spots along its flank. I could hardly contain my excitement. This was it. Proof of an undiscovered species. I just needed clearer images, definitive evidence. But as the days passed and I reviewed each night's footage, my excitement began to turn to unease. The creature was appearing more frequently, and it was getting closer to my cameras, closer to my camp. One image in particular stuck with me. The creature, now clearly visible, was staring directly into the camera. Its eyes reflected the infrared light, glowing an eerie red. But it was the intelligence in those eyes that chilled me. This wasn't the blank stare of an animal. There was purpose there, curiosity, maybe even malice. I told myself I was anthropomorphizing, projecting human qualities onto an animal. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. A week into my stay, I woke in the middle of the night to a strange sound, a sort of chittering, like insects but deeper, more guttural. It was close, just outside my tent. I lay there, heart pounding, barely daring to breathe. Something moved past the tent, its shadow visible through the thin fabric. I could hear it sniffing, taking long, deep inhalations. Then, silence. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I heard it move away, the underbrush rustling as it retreated into the forest. Come morning, I found prints around my tent. They were like nothing I'd ever seen, vaguely hand-like, but with long, curving claws at the end of each digit. I photographed them meticulously, my hands shaking as I operated the camera. That should have been my cue to pack up and leave. Any sane person would have hightailed it out of there, but I couldn't. Not when I was this close to the discovery of a lifetime. So I stayed. I moved my tent, set up more cameras. I started sleeping with my largest knife close at hand, though I wasn't sure what good it would do against a creature that could rip through canvas like paper. Each night, the images from my trail cams became clearer, more terrifying. The creature, and I was becoming increasingly convinced there was only one, was larger than I'd initially thought. Its body was covered in a sort of mottled fur, with those bioluminescent patches glowing softly in the infrared images. Its face was a nightmare, almost human in structure, but with a protruding snout filled with sharp teeth, and those intelligent, hungry eyes. It was studying my cameras, I realized. In some images, it would be examining them closely. tilting its head as if trying to understand the device. In others, it would be looking past the camera, towards my camp. I stopped sleeping more than an hour or two at a time. Every snapping twig, every rustle of leaves would jolt me awake, my hand clutching my knife, but it never came closer than the periphery of my camp, at least, not while I was awake. On what I'd decided would be my last night, creature or no creature, I couldn't take the stress anymore. I set up one final camera. I positioned it facing my tent, hoping to catch the creature if it approached during the night. I don't know what woke me. There was no sound, no movement that I was aware of. Just a sudden, overwhelming sense of wrong that jolted me from sleep. The chittering sound was back, but it wasn't outside the tent this time. It was inside, right next to me. I opened my eyes and found myself staring directly into the face of the creature. It was crouched over me, its hot breath fanning across my face, smelling of rotted meat and damp earth. Those bioluminescent patches pulsed softly, casting an eerie glow inside the tent. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to even scream. The creature tilted its head, studying me with those terrifyingly intelligent eyes. Then, deliberately, it reached out one long-fingered hand and grasped the knife I'd been clutching in my sleep. It pulled it from my grip effortlessly, never breaking eye contact. I was certain I was about to die. I waited for the slash of claws, the snap of teeth. But instead, the creature turned away. It moved to where my camera was set up, raised the knife, and in one swift motion, smashed the device to pieces. Then, it turned back to me. It made a sound, not the chittering from before, but something almost like speech. A series of clicks and guttural noises that, impossibly, seemed to form words. No, see, us. With that, it slashed its claws across the tent wall and was gone, leaving me alone in my shredded shelter, surrounded by the wreckage of my equipment. I don't remember packing up. I don't remember the hike back to civilization. The next clear memory I have is sitting in a diner miles away from the forest, my hands shaking as I tried to hold a cup of coffee. I never reported what I saw. Who would believe me? I had no evidence the creature had seen to that. All my cameras were destroyed, the images lost. Even the prints around my tent had been obliterated, obscured by what looked like deliberate scraping of the ground. I've spent the years since trying to make sense of what happened. Was it really an unknown species? Some kind of primate that had evolved in isolation? Or was it something else entirely? Something that defied scientific classification? I don't know. But I do know this. There are things in this world that we don't understand. Things that don't want to be understood. And sometimes, when we go looking for the unknown looks back. I haven't set foot in a forest since that night. I've given up wildlife photography, moved to the city where the only creatures I have to worry about are of the human variety. But sometimes, late at night, I wake up in a cold sweat, certain I can hear that chittering sound outside my window. And I lie there, paralyzed, wondering, did I really escape that night? Or did it let me go? And if it did, why? Because deep down, I can't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, in the dark forests of the Pacific Northwest, something is waiting, watching, and maybe, just maybe, it's still hunting me. So if you're ever in the wilderness, setting up trail cams in hopes of capturing images of elusive wildlife be careful, be very careful, because you never know what might be capturing images of you. And some things, once seen, can never be unseen. The first time I saw the figure darting between the corn rows, I told myself it was just my imagination. By the time I realized the truth, I was lost in an endless maze of stalks, my phone dead, and night falling fast. I never should have gone into that field alone. My name's Jack, and I've worked summers on my uncle's farm since I was old enough to walk. At 17, I thought I knew every inch of the sprawling cornfields that stretched as far as the eye could see. But on that sweltering July evening, I learned that some parts of the farm held secrets darker than I could have ever imagined. It started with a malfunctioning irrigation system. Uncle Dave had noticed one section of the field wasn't getting enough water, and he asked me to check it out. Simple enough task, I thought. I'd done it 100 times before. I set out just as the sun was starting to dip towards the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The corn was at its full height, easily towering over my 6-foot frame. I'd always loved walking through the fields at this time of year, feeling dwarfed by the lush green stalks stretching endlessly in every direction. The faulty section was near the center of the field, so I had a good 10-minute walk ahead of me. I moved quickly, wanting to get the job done before dark. The corn rustled around me as I pushed through, the leaves rough against my bare arms. About halfway to my destination, I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Not the usual chorus of crickets or the distant lowing of cattle, but something else. A sort of skittering noise, like something moving rapidly through the corn just out of sight. I paused, listening intently. For a moment, there was nothing but the normal sounds of a summer evening on the farm. Then I heard it again, closer this time. A rush of movement, the corn stalks swaying unnaturally about 20 feet to my left. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding small and uncertain in the vast field. "Is someone there?" No response, just another rustle of movement, this time behind me. I turned quickly, heart starting to race. That's when I saw it. Just a glimpse, really. A dark figure, darting between the rows of corn. It was there and gone so fast I couldn't make out any details. Just an impression of something large, moving in a way that didn't seem quite human. I told myself I was imagining things. It was probably just a deer, I reasoned, or maybe one of the farm dogs had gotten into the field. But deep down, I knew it wasn't either of those things. I picked up my pace, no longer meandering but moving with purpose towards the irrigation system. The sooner I fixed the problem, the sooner I could get out of this field. But as I walked, I became increasingly disoriented. The rows all looked the same, an endless sea of green. I could have sworn I should have reached the faulty section by now, but there was no sign of it. I pulled out my phone, intending to use the GPS to get my bearings. My stomach dropped when I saw the screen. No signal. And worse, the battery was almost dead. I'd forgotten to charge it last night. That's when I heard the skittering noise again. Much closer this time. Close enough that I could hear something else underneath the sound of movement. A low, guttural growl that raised the hair on the back of my neck. I started to run. I crashed through the corn, no longer caring about following the rows. All sense of direction was lost as I fled from the unseen presence that I could feel pursuing me. Cornstalks whipped at my face and arms, leaving stinging cuts, but I didn't slow down. I don't know how long I ran. It could have been minutes or hours. Time seemed to lose all meaning in that green maze. But eventually, gasping for breath, I had to stop. I bent over, hands on my knees, trying to gulp in air. The sun had almost set now, the light fading rapidly. As my breathing slowed, I realized I couldn't hear anything. No crickets, no birds, nothing but the sound of my own panting breaths. Then, a rustle, directly in front of me. I straightened up slowly, my eyes straining in the dim light. The corn parted, and a figure stepped out into the small clearing I'd found myself in. My mind struggled to make sense of what I was seeing. It was vaguely humanoid in shape, but wrong. Too tall, too thin. Its arms hung down past its knees, ending in hands tipped with long, curved claws. But it was the face that made my blood run cold. Where features should have been, there was only smooth, blank skin. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just a featureless oval of pallid flesh. I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to even scream. The creature cocked its head to one side, as if studying me. Then, impossibly, a seam appeared in the smooth face. It split open, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. That's when I found my voice. I screamed. a sound of pure terror that seemed to startle the creature. It flinched back, and I seized the opportunity. I turned and ran again, no longer caring about direction or finding my way out. I just needed to get away from that thing. I crashed through the corn, branches and leaves slashing at me. I could hear it behind me, moving impossibly fast. That skittering sound was all around me now, as if there were multiple creatures converging on my position. Just when I thought my legs would give out, I burst out of the cornfield. I found myself on the dirt road that ran along the edge of the property. In the distance, I could see the lights of the farmhouse. I ran towards those lights like my life depended on it, because I was pretty sure it did. I don't remember much of what happened next. I have vague memories of bursting into the kitchen, babbling incoherently to my startled aunt and uncle. I remember the look of concern on their faces turning to alarm as they took in my scratched and bleeding state. Uncle Dave got out his rifle and went to check the fields, but of course, he found nothing. No strange creatures, no signs of anything unusual, just corn, stretching as far as the eye could see in the beam of his flashlight. They thought I'd gotten heat stroke, become disoriented and panicked in the field. And part of me wanted to believe that, wanted to think it had all been some kind of hallucination brought on by dehydration and exhaustion. But I know what I saw, what I heard, what I felt pursuing me through that cornfield. I left for college a month later, earlier than planned. I told my parents I was eager to get settled in my dorm, but the truth was, I couldn't stand to be on that farm anymore. Couldn't bear to look at those fields and wonder what might be hiding in them. It's been 5 years since that night. I'm finishing up my degree now, in a city far from any cornfields. I thought I'd put it all behind me. But last week, I got a call from my aunt. Uncle Dave had disappeared. He'd gone out to check on the irrigation system one evening and never came back. They found his truck parked at the edge of the field, but no sign of him. As she spoke, I could hear the panic in her voice, the fear. But underneath that, I heard something else. The faint sound of rustling corn, carrying through the phone line. And just before the call cut out, I heard it. That skittering noise that has haunted my nightmares for years. I'm on my way back to the farm now. I know it's crazy. I know I should stay far away from those fields, but I can't abandon my family. I have to know the truth. So if you're ever driving through farm country on a summer evening, and you see a sea of corn stretching to the horizon, remember this. Not all fields are what they seem, and sometimes the real danger isn't getting lost in the rows. It's what might find you there. Because in some cornfields, something is waiting, watching, hungry, and it's only a matter of time before it decides to harvest. The moment we set foot on that abandoned yacht, I knew something was terribly wrong. The eerie silence, the signs of struggle, the increasingly frantic logbook entries, it all pointed to a nightmare we couldn't begin to imagine. But by the time we realized the true horror of what had happened, it was already too late. We weren't alone on that ghost ship, and our uninvited guests were hungry. My name's Mike, and I've been a commercial fisherman out of Gloucester, Massachusetts for the better part of 2 decades. I've seen my share of strange things out on the water. Freak storms, impossible waves, even what I swear was a sea monster once, though no one believes that story after a few beers. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what happened that day on the Atlantic. It was supposed to be a routine fishing trip. Me and my crew, my first mate Jack, and our greenhorn Charlie, had set out at dawn, heading for our usual spots about 100 miles offshore. The weather was perfect, clear skies and calm seas. We were looking forward to a good haul. We'd been out for about 6 hours when Jack spotted it. A yacht, drifting aimlessly about a half-mile off our starboard side. It was a big one, probably 80 feet or so, the kind of boat that costs more than I'd make in 10 lifetimes. "Should we check it out?" Charlie asked, his voice tinged with excitement. The kid was always eager for anything out of the ordinary. I hesitated. Maritime law says you're obligated to render assistance to vessels in distress, but something about this didn't feel right. The yacht seemed intact. No visible damage. Why wasn't anyone on deck? Why hadn't they radioed for help? But in the end, duty won out over my unease. "Bring us alongside," I ordered Jack, "but keep the engine running. If anything seems off, we're out of here." As we drew closer, the wrongness of the situation became more apparent. The yacht was pristine, almost too clean, no signs of life on deck, no movement at all. It was as if the boat had been abandoned in a hurry. We pulled up alongside and hailed them. No response. I tried the radio. Nothing but static. "I don't like this, Mike," Jack muttered, his weathered face creased with concern. I didn't either, but we were here now. "Let's take a quick look," I said. "Charlie, you stay here with the boat. Jack and I will check it out. If anything happens, anything at all, you radio the Coast Guard and get the hell out of here. Understood?" Charlie nodded, his earlier excitement replaced by nervous energy. Jack and I boarded the yacht, the gentle lapping of waves against the hull the only sound. The deck was immaculate, not a rope out of place. But as we approached the main cabin, I noticed something odd. Scratches on the door frame, deep gouges in the polished wood. I exchanged a glance with Jack. He'd seen it too. We both drew the filleting knives we kept on our belts. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. I pushed open the door, wincing at the creak of hinges. The interior was dim, shafts of sunlight filtering through partially closed blinds. As my eyes adjusted, I took in the scene before us. The main salon was a mess. Furniture overturned, cushions slashed open, and there, on the plush carpet, dark stains that could only be blood. "Jesus," Jack whispered. "What the hell happened here?" I shook my head, my mouth dry. "Let's check the rest of the boat, quick and quiet. If we find anyone, alive or otherwise, we radio the Coast Guard immediately." We moved through the yacht, room by room. The galley was ransacked, cupboards emptied, food scattered everywhere. The staterooms were in similar disarray, clothes strewn about, more of those unsettling bloodstains on the sheets. But it was what we found in the captain's quarters that chilled me to the bone. The room was relatively untouched, save for the desk. Papers were scattered everywhere, and in the center lay an open logbook. The early entries were mundane, weather reports, course changes, nothing unusual. But as we flipped through the pages, the tone changed dramatically. The last entry, dated just 2 days ago, was a scrawl of barely legible handwriting. "They're inside the walls. God help us. They're inside the walls. If anyone finds this, don't..." The entry ended abruptly, a long ink streak trailing off the page. Jack and I looked at each other, the same thought mirrored in our eyes. We needed to get off this boat. Now, that's when we heard it. A skittering sound, like something moving inside the walls. At first, I thought it might be rats, but rats don't make the walls bulge and ripple like something massive was moving through them. "Run!" I yelled, all pretense of stealth forgotten. We burst out of the captain's quarters, racing for the deck. Behind us, I could hear the sound of tearing metal, of something bursting free from its confinement. We emerged into the sunlight, gasping for breath. Charlie was at the railing of our boat, eyes wide with fear. "Start the engine," I bellowed. "We're leaving." But before we could make it to our vessel, something erupted from the yacht's deck. The polished wood splintered as a creature burst through, all writhing tentacles and gnashing teeth. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Part octopus, part eel, but twisted into something nightmarish and wrong. More of them followed, pouring out of every opening in the yacht. They moved with terrifying speed, undulating across the deck towards us. Jack was closest to our boat. He leaped the gap, landing hard on our deck. I was right behind him, my muscles screaming as I pushed myself to jump farther than I ever had before. I made it. Barely. Tentacles lashed at my legs as I sailed through the air, but they fell short by inches. "Go!" Go! Go! I shouted at Charlie, who was frozen at the wheel, his face a mask of terror. The roar of our engine coming to life snapped him out of it. He threw the throttle forward, and we lurched away from the yacht. But the creatures weren't done with us. They poured over the side of the yacht, hitting the water and swimming with unnatural speed. I could see more of them bursting out of the hull below the waterline, the yacht's immaculate white paint stained with spreading tendrils of some black, oily substance. "Faster!" Jack yelled, grabbing a gaff hook and swinging it at a tentacle that had latched onto our stern. Charlie pushed our boat to its limits, the engine screaming in protest. Slowly, agonizingly, we began to pull away from the writhing mass of creatures pursuing us. I don't know how long we ran. Hours. Maybe. We didn't slow down until the yacht was long out of sight and our fuel gauge was dangerously low. Only then did we dare to breathe, to try and process what we'd seen. We radioed the Coast Guard, trying to explain what had happened. They didn't believe us, of course. How could they? It sounded insane even to us, and we'd lived through it. They sent out a cutter to investigate, but by the time they reached the coordinates we gave them, there was no sign of the yacht, no debris, no oil slick, nothing to indicate a boat had ever been there. We were questioned for hours when we got back to port. The authorities thought we were running drugs, or had stumbled upon some kind of smuggling operation. They couldn't wrap their heads around what we were telling them. In the end, they let us go. No evidence of wrongdoing, they said. Just the ravings of fishermen who'd been out in the sun too long. But I know what I saw, what we all saw. There's something out there in the Atlantic, something that doesn't belong in this world, something that can infest a ship, hollow it out from the inside, and wait for unsuspecting victims. I don't go out on the water anymore, can't bring myself to set foot on a boat. Jack and Charlie are the same way. We've all found jobs on land as far from the ocean as we can get, but sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear it, that skittering sound, like something moving inside my walls. And I lie awake, wondering, did we really escape that day? Or did we bring something back with us? So, if you're ever out on the ocean and you come across a drifting boat, pristine and seemingly abandoned, don't approach it, don't board it, just run. Run as fast and as far as you can, because some ghost ships aren't empty, and some nightmares don't end when you think you've escaped. The moment our flashlights began to flicker, I knew we'd made a terrible mistake. The darkness of the abandoned mine seemed to press in around us, hungry and alive. And as the last light died, leaving us in pitch blackness, I heard it, the sound of something ancient and angry stirring in the depths. My name's Alex, and I've been an urban explorer for the better part of a decade. There's something intoxicating about uncovering the secrets of abandoned places, about walking where few have dared to tread in years, maybe even centuries. But our expedition into the old Holloway silver mine would prove to be my last. It started, as these things often do, with a rumor. Whispers on message boards about a vast network of tunnels beneath the mountains of Colorado, untouched since the mine's mysterious closure in 1923. The stories varied. Some said the miners had struck a rich new vein right before the shutdown. Others swore they'd uncovered something that wasn't silver at all, something that led to the mine being sealed off by the government. Whatever the truth, it was too tempting to resist. I gathered a small team, my usual exploring partner, Sam at Go, and a local guide named Mike who claimed to know a way in. We packed our gear, told ourselves we were prepared for anything, and set off into the wilderness. The entrance to the mine was hidden behind a tangle of overgrown vegetation, the old warning signs barely visible beneath a century of neglect. Mike led us to a section of the hillside that looked no different from any other, then pushed aside a curtain of vines to reveal a narrow opening. This was an old air shaft, he explained, his voice tinged with excitement. The main entrance was collapsed decades ago, but this should take us right into the heart of the mine. We switched on our headlamps and entered single file, the beam of light from my lamp seeming pitifully small against the vast darkness ahead. The air was cool and damp, heavy with the musty smell of long-abandoned spaces. For the first hour or so, everything went smoothly. We marveled at the old equipment left behind, rusted carts and pickaxes frozen in time. Sam took photos, the flash of her camera momentarily illuminating vast chambers carved out of the living rock. But as we delved deeper, an uneasy feeling began to creep over me. The tunnels seemed to twist and turn in ways that defied logic, leading us ever downward. And there was something about the quality of the darkness that felt wrong. It seemed to swallow our light, pressing in around the edges of our beams as if trying to consume them. "Does anyone else feel like we're being watched?" Sam whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the confined space. I was about to dismiss her concern when I saw it, a flicker of movement just at the edge of my light's beam. I swung my flashlight towards it, but there was nothing there, just more darkness. "It's probably just bats," Mike said, but he didn't sound convinced. We pressed on, the uneasy feeling growing with every step. That's when our lights started to fail. It happened gradually at first. My headlamp dimmed, then brightened again. Sam's flashlight flickered intermittently. We all checked our batteries, but they were fresh. We'd put new ones in just before entering the mine. "This doesn't make sense," I muttered, tapping my lamp. "These should last for days." As if in response to my words, all of our lights went out simultaneously, plunging us into absolute darkness. For a moment, we stood frozen, the sudden absence of light disorienting. Then Sam let out a nervous laugh. "Okay, very funny, guys. Who turned out the lights?" But it wasn't a joke. No matter what we did, none of our lights would come back on. Even the screen of my phone remained stubbornly dark. "Everyone stay calm," I said, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. Let's just stay put for a minute. Our eyes will adjust." But they didn't. The darkness remained absolute, pressing against my eyeballs like a physical thing. I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face. That's when we heard it, a sound echoing from deep within the mine. At first it was faint, a sort of scraping noise, like stone grinding against stone. But it grew louder, closer. "What is that?" Sam whispered, her voice trembling. Before I could answer, another sound joined the first, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through the very rock around us. It was a sound that didn't belong in this world, ancient and hungry and undeniably alive. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing for Sam's hand in the darkness. We ran blindly through the tunnels, one hand on the rough wall to guide us. The sounds behind us grew louder, accompanied now by the unmistakable noise of something large moving through the mine shafts, something that was gaining on us. I don't know how long we ran. Time lost all meaning in that lightless maze. We stumbled over unseen obstacles, scraped against jagged rocks, all the while with that terrible sound growing ever closer. Suddenly, my outstretched hand met empty air. We'd reached some kind of chamber. The echoes of our panicked breathing suggested it was vast. "Stop," I gasped. "We need to figure out where we are." As we stood there, gulping in air, I became aware of a change in the atmosphere. The air felt different here, less stale, with a faint breeze that suggested a connection to the surface. I think we might be near an exit," I said, hope rising in my chest. But that hope was short-lived, because at that moment, we heard it again, that grinding, rumbling sound. Only now, it wasn't just behind us. It was all around us, coming from every direction. And then, impossibly, we saw light. Not the warm, comforting light of the sun or our flashlights, but a cold, pale bioluminescence that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the chamber. As our eyes adjusted to this faint illumination, I almost wished for the darkness again, because now we could see what had been pursuing us. They were everywhere. Creatures that defied description, like a nightmarish fusion of insect and reptile. Their segmented bodies clung to the walls and ceiling, each easily the size of a car. Multifaceted eyes glowed with an alien intelligence, fixed unblinkingly upon us. But it was the largest creature that drew our terrified gaze. It sat in the center of the chamber, a monstrosity that dwarfed its brethren. Its massive jaws worked slowly, grinding the stones it seemed to feed upon. This, I realized with dawning horror, was the source of the grinding sound we'd heard. For a moment that felt like an eternity, there was perfect stillness. We stood, frozen in terror, as the creatures regarded us with cold, alien curiosity. Then, as one, they began to move towards us. What happened next is a blur in my memory. There was screaming. Maybe mine, maybe Sam's or Mike's. We ran again, no longer caring about direction, just desperate to escape the horrors behind us. By some miracle, we found another tunnel. We sprinted down it, the scrabbling sounds of pursuit echoing behind us. Just when I thought my legs would give out, I saw it, a pinprick of natural light ahead. We burst out of the mine into the fading evening light, gasping and stumbling. We didn't stop running until we reached our car, parked what felt like miles away on a lonely dirt road. As we sped away, I looked back at the mountain that housed the Holloway mine. For a moment, I thought I saw movement at the entrance we'd emerged from, a glimpse of something large and insectile withdrawing into the darkness. Then it was gone, leaving me to wonder if I'd imagined it. We drove straight to the nearest police station, babbling our story to increasingly skeptical officers. They searched the area we described, but found nothing out of the ordinary. No strange creatures. No vast chambers filled with bioluminescent horror. Just an old, abandoned mine, slowly being reclaimed by nature. Part of me wants to believe it was all a hallucination, some kind of shared delusion brought on by the darkness and the thin air of the mountains. But I know what I saw, what I heard, what I felt in those lightless tunnels. I don't go exploring anymore. Can't bring myself to enter so much as a dark basement these days. Sam and Mike are the same way. We've all found new hobbies, new passions that keep us firmly in the light. But sometimes, late at night, I wake up in a cold sweat. In those moments between sleep and waking, I swear I can hear it, that grinding, rumbling sound. And I lie there, heart pounding, wondering, did we really escape that day? Or did we bring something back with us? Something that's slowly working its way towards the surface? So if you're ever tempted to explore an abandoned mine, to delve into the dark places beneath the earth, don't. Some secrets are meant to stay buried, and some darknesses, once seen, can never be unseen. Because sometimes, the real monsters aren't hiding in the shadows. They are the shadows, and they're always hungry for more. The first time I noticed something was off, it was the silence. No footsteps in the hallway, no chatter from neighboring rooms. Just an eerie quiet that seemed to press in from all sides. By the time I realized the truth, it was too late. I was trapped in a nightmare, and the hotel itself seemed to be my jailer. My name is David, and or I guess I should say I was, a traveling salesman. Medical supplies, to be specific. I spent more nights in hotels than in my own bed, crisscrossing the country, living out of a suitcase. I thought I'd seen it all when it came to accommodations, from 5-star luxury to roach-infested dives, but nothing could have prepared me for room 313 at the Pinewood Inn. It was meant to be a routine overnight stay, just another forgettable hotel in another forgettable town. I'd driven for hours through a relentless downpour, the windshield wipers barely keeping up with the deluge. When I saw the flickering neon sign of the Pinewood Inn, I was ready to call it a night. The lobby was deserted when I entered, water dripping from my coat to form a puddle on the faded carpet. A bell sat on the front desk, and I gave it a ring. The sound echoed unnaturally in the empty space. After a moment, a man emerged from a back room. He was tall and gaunt, with deep-set eyes that seemed to look right through me. "Checking in," he asked, his voice a dry whisper. I nodded, suppressing a shiver. Something about this place felt off, but I chalked it up to exhaustion and the gloomy weather. Just one night, I said, fishing out my credit card. The clerk's long fingers danced over an ancient-looking computer. Room 313, he said, sliding a key across the desk. An actual metal key, not the key cards most hotels use these days. 3rd floor, elevators to your left. I took the key, noticing how cold it felt in my hand. Thanks. Is there anywhere nearby I could grab a bite to eat? The clerk's face remained impassive. Kitchens closed. Vending machines on each floor. Great. Dinner of champions. I thanked him and headed for the elevator, dragging my wheeled suitcase behind me. The elevator creaked and groaned its way up to the 3rd floor. As the doors slid open, I was struck again by the silence. Shouldn't there be some noise in a hotel? TVs from other rooms, people talking, something. I made my way down the dimly lit hallway, the worn carpet muffling my footsteps. Room 313 was at the very end, tucked away in a corner. The key stuck a bit in the lock, but with some jiggling, the door swung open. The room was unremarkable. A bit dated, maybe, with floral wallpaper that had seen better days and a TV that looked like it was from the 90s. But it was clean, and the bed looked comfortable enough. I set my suitcase down and flopped onto the bed, the events of the long day catching up with me. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, I was jolted awake by a sound. It took me a moment to place it, knocking. Someone was knocking on my door. I glanced at the bedside clock, 2:17 a.m. Who the hell would be knocking at this hour? Hello? I called out, my voice rough with sleep. No response. Just another series of knocks, more insistent this time. I got up, a sense of unease growing in the pit of my stomach. I approached the door, but something made me hesitate before opening it. Instead, I put my eye to the peephole. The hallway outside was empty. I shook my head, trying to clear the cobwebs of sleep. Maybe I'd dreamed the knocking. But even as I thought it, the sound came again. Only this time, it wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from the window. My blood ran cold. I was on the 3rd floor. Slowly, I turned towards the window. The curtains were drawn, but I could see a shadow moving behind them. A human shape, but wrong somehow. Too tall, too thin. I stood frozen, unable to move, unable to even breathe. The knocking continued, growing louder, more frantic. Then suddenly it stopped. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, a voice. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once, seeming to seep out of the very walls. "Let us in, David," it whispered. "We've been waiting for you." That broke my paralysis. I lunged for the door, yanking it open and bursting into the hallway. I had to get out of here, had to find help. But the hallway, it was wrong. It seemed to stretch on forever, the doors repeating endlessly. I turned back to look at my room, but 313 had vanished. Every door now bore the same number, CY0. I ran, my heart pounding in my chest. The hallway seemed to twist and turn, defying the laws of physics. No matter how far I went, I couldn't find the elevator, the stairs any way out. And all the while, I could hear them, whispers and scratches, coming from behind every door. Sometimes, I'd catch a glimpse of movement in my peripheral vision, a shadow darting across the hall, a hand reaching out from a doorway. But whenever I turned to look, there was nothing there. I don't know how long I ran. Hours, maybe. My legs burned. My lungs screamed for air, but I didn't dare stop. Because I knew with a bone-deep certainty, that if I stopped, they would get me. Finally, I saw it. The elevator. I practically fell into it, jabbing frantically at the lobby button. As the doors began to close, I saw them. Figures emerging from the rooms, gliding down the hallway towards me. Their faces, God, their faces were... The doors slammed shut, cutting off my view. I sagged against the wall, gulping in air. The elevator began to descend, and for a moment I allowed myself to hope. Maybe this nightmare was over. Maybe I'd get to the lobby and find everything normal. But when the doors opened, I wasn't in the lobby. I was back in room 313. The room had changed. The wallpaper was peeling now, revealing pulsing, organic-looking material underneath. The bed writhed as if alive, sheets twisting like tentacles. And there, reflected in the mirror, was a figure. But it wasn't me. It wore my face. But the eyes. The eyes were black voids, endless and hungry. It smiled, revealing too many teeth, sharp and gleaming. "Welcome home, David," it said, its voice a chorus of whispers. "We've been waiting so long," I screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw, until I tasted blood. I screamed as the room twisted around me, as unseen hands grabbed at me from the shadows. And then, I woke up. I was in my car, parked at a rest stop. Rain pattered against the windshield. My phone was buzzing, a missed call from my boss, wondering why I hadn't shown up for my meeting. For a long moment, I just sat there trying to get my bearings. It had all been a dream. A vivid, terrifying nightmare, but just a dream. I must have pulled over when I got too tired to drive, fallen asleep at the wheel. I started the car, ready to put this all behind me. But as I pulled out of the rest stop, I caught sight of something in my rearview mirror that made my blood run cold. There, on the back seat, was a key. An old-fashioned metal key, with a tag attached. Room 313, it read. Pinewood Inn. I drove and didn't stop until I was 3 states away. I quit my job, sold my house, changed my name. I don't stay in hotels anymore. Can't bring myself to even look at one, because I know the truth now. The Pinewood Inn is out there, waiting. It might not be in the same place, might not even look the same, but it's waiting. For me, for you, for anyone unlucky enough to check in. So if you're ever driving late at night, tired and looking for a place to rest, and you see a hotel you don't remember being there before, keep driving. No matter how exhausted you are, no matter how bad the weather is, just keep driving. Because some rooms you check into, you never really check out of. And in some hotels, every night is an eternity.